From the coal fields of western Pennsylvania to the football fields of the NFL, from hobnobbing with presidential hopefuls, movie stars, and sports legends to fending off creditors, lenders, and the press, Jerry Wolman has seen and done it all. We're going to hear his incredible rags to riches story right now on It's Your Call. Do you recognize this man? He played a huge role in developing the Philadelphia Eagles, the Flyers, the Sixers, and even the Phillies. And in Chicago, his vision for building the then tallest building was known as the John Hancock Center. He once had all the money in the world, and then he lost everything. His story is your classic American rags to riches one with a twist. He's actually more like rags to riches to rags and back again. So who is he? He's Jerry Wolman, the subject of a new book, Jerry Wolman, The World's Richest Man by Joseph Backel and Richard Backel. Hello everyone, it's good to have you with us. I'm Lynn Doyle. So is my guest really the world's richest man? Well, we're going to find out. Jerry Wolman's here. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Lynn.
Do you consider yourself today, after everything that you've been through, a rich man?
I considered myself the richest man in the world before I had money and after I had money because of my relationship with my family.
And you had money. I mean, at a very young age, you had more money than God, essentially. More money than you could probably even count.
Well, I did have a lot of money, and I hope it didn't change my values at any time, and I enjoyed it when I had it.
Wouldn't we all enjoy it? But the important thing is that you were able to continue enjoying life even after you lost it, and that's where his story becomes very compelling. Jerry started his life in the coal fields of Pennsylvania in Shenandoah, right?
Shenandoah.
And describe for us what your early childhood was like.
Well, very early, I think when I was about 5 years old, I started working at my father's produce place. And I worked most of my young life. I eventually drove a truck from Shenandoah to Philadelphia, would drive most of the night and then go to school during the day. And I followed that until I left and went into the Merchant Marines during the Second World War.
And then after that, you got into the construction business in Washington, D.C., and it was very lucrative for you. You had a real feel for it.
I loved it. I just felt that there was something that was just great. I was actually selling paint, and I felt when I went out to the jobs and I would see buildings rising up out of the air, and I'd see lights the next time I went out there, it just gave me a charge that it's something I wanted to be able to create.
And so you amassed your first part of your fortune in that construction industry. But throughout all of this, from your early days in Western Pennsylvania to your being flush in Washington, D.C., you had a passion, and that passion was for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, as a young kid up in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania, we only knew one sport, really. It was football. Mm-hmm. And we all rooted for the Philadelphia Eagles, and my best friend and myself, we'd hitch a ride to Philadelphia just to go to the game when we were kids. And when I had heard that the Philadelphia Eagles were for sale, it was like a dream come true. And then I went out to do everything I could to buy them. And
in fact, it was a dream come true. So many of us use that expression. I'm sure you have as well. But how many people actually get to make their dream come true? You had the opportunity to buy the Philadelphia Eagles at a very young age. In fact, you were the youngest owner ever in the NFL at the time. How did that opportunity present itself?
Well, before I say that, Lynn, people won't always make their dream come true, okay? And I was just lucky enough to do so. But I think people should still follow their dream. There's nothing wrong if you fail. There is something wrong if you don't try. Right. And I became the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles because I was financially in a position to be able to buy them. And it's a little bit of an ego trip, but it's a great ego trip.
Oh, I can't even imagine. So tell me what it was like. And you're not offended if I use that term rags to riches, because it truly is, in fact, a good way to describe your personal story, right? When you realized that you had just entered the winning bid to become the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, can you recall?
I recall every second.
How that felt, what emotions you experienced at the time?
I think I smoked then about 4 packs of cigarettes, which I don't do anymore.
No, but, don't advocate.
But When it was announced that I was the winning bidder, because without going through all the detail, but there was a lot going on trying to be sure I was the winning bidder. When it was announced, I felt like I was going to collapse, okay, because it was something that I could not believe was happening. And I spent hours at the boardroom where the bids were taken, and all of a sudden, like this little kid from Shenandoah, I have cameras all over me with reporters and TV and radio and newspapers for hours interviewing me, and I actually enjoyed it. But I have to tell you a quick part of the story. What really brought me back down to earth was that I was offered a ride home by somebody's plane back to Washington from Philadelphia, and I took advantage of it. Then the gentleman had his limousine pick me up, got home. I walked into the house, and my wife hollered from upstairs. She said, and I hadn't called her yet to tell her we were the successful bidder. She said, "How was it?" I said, "And it was unbelievable. It was fantastic. Just let me grab a glass of milk before I come up." And she said, "Okay, but before you do, put the garbage out." So it brought me right back down to earth.
And I can tell from reading the book that Ann, who was your first true love, who has since passed, really had a way of keeping you with your feet on the ground so that you never forgot you were from Shenandoah.
I never forgot it.
I got that from reading that book. That was one thing I could tell. Okay. So you, we should probably mention that this was in the early 60s, so there wasn't the kind of, even though there was media press, it wasn't the instantaneous delivery of news like today. It would be on the bottom of the screen before you signed the contracts. So you became the owner. You had to be approved by the other owners in the NFL, which you were unanimously, and then started this trek within the NFL. I mean, just when I think about that, it just seems like that would have just been a most amazing journey.
It was an amazing journey, Lynn, and it was, at times I was very much intimidated of sitting with people like George Halas and like Art Rooney, who I thought was a saint, and he was.
And that's the owner of the Steelers.
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
And
see, in Philly, we don't like them. I'm just letting you know, in case you didn't realize.
He loved everybody in Philly. Okay. But it was just, I was at times intimidated. Then I got into the swing of things, and I enjoyed the meetings, and I tried to contribute whenever I could.
And you actually, you were a hands-on owner, right?
I was a hands-on, except for the football area. I realized that I didn't know enough about football, so I entrusted the football operation to the coaches, and I backed them up on whatever he wanted to do.
Okay, so here he is. He's owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, and then he finds himself with opportunities to get involved with some other Philadelphia sports teams in one way, shape, or form. But eventually, his involvement with all of those teams came to an end. If you want to find out why, you're going to have to stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more of The World's Richest Man, the name of the book that is about Jerry Wolman, right after this.